The sun had barely dipped below the rooftops of our quiet suburban neighborhood when the first sign of trouble appeared. My wife and I had moved into this cul-de-sac barely 6 months ago, drawn to the promise of a safe community, tree-lined streets, and the kind of peaceful evenings we thought we both deserved after years of living in cramped city apartments. We had saved every penny, working double shifts, skipping vacations, and driving the same old car for years just to finally buy this house. For us, it wasn't just 4 walls and a roof, it was our dream, our sanctuary. But as anyone who has ever tangled with an HOA knows, dreams don't stay untouched for long. From the first week, the so-called rules of our homeowners association made it clear that our life was under a microscope. Whether it was the color of our shutters, the type of grass seed on our lawn, or the fact that my wife's police cruiser was sometimes parked in the driveway when she came home late from her shift, the HOA president, our neighbor, a woman everyone in the street called Karen, behind her back, always seemed to find a reason to knock on our door with a clipboard in hand and a disapproving scowl on her face. At first, we tried to be diplomatic. My wife, calm and composed in most situations thanks to her years in law enforcement, would smile politely and explain that we weren't breaking any real rules. I, on the other hand, had to bite my tongue more times than I could count. But Karen was relentless. She would patrol the street like it was her personal kingdom, jotting notes and snapping pictures of anyone who dared step out of line. It wasn't enough that she sent passive-aggressive letters stuffed into our mailbox, she seemed to thrive on confrontation. I could tell from the way she'd square her shoulders and jab her finger in the air that she enjoyed the power. And yet, nothing prepared me for the night she decided to cross the line from harassment into outright violation. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, when I heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in our front lock. My heart skipped. My first thought was that maybe my wife had forgotten her key and found some way to force the door open. But she wasn't due home for another hour, and the sound was too deliberate. It wasn't someone struggling, it was someone unlocking the door with confidence, as if they belonged there. I sprang to my feet, pulse pounding in my ears, just as the front door swung open. There she stood, Karen, our HOA president, in her bright blazer, her face pinched with entitlement, holding a shiny gold key in her hand. She looked at me not like she was trespassing but as if I were the intruder in her space. "You're in violation," she announced smugly, stepping 1 foot inside. "I told you the bylaws give me authority to inspect." I couldn't believe the audacity. My voice trembled with fury as I told her she had no right to be inside my home, that she was trespassing. But Karen only smirked, waving the key between her fingers like it was some kind of badge of honor. "Don't make this difficult," she said. "You people think you can move in and ignore the rules, but in this neighborhood, I make sure standards are enforced." My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I lost control, she'd twist it against us. Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and, to my disbelief, began dialing 911. "Fine," she snapped. "If you won't cooperate, I'll have the police deal with you." Minutes later, the red and blue glow of a patrol car lit up our street. A uniformed officer stepped out, looking weary but professional, clearly unaware of the storm he was walking into. Karen immediately rushed to him like a queen greeting her knight, pointing dramatically toward me. "That's him," she shouted. "He's hostile, he's breaking HOA regulations, and he threatened me." Her voice was shrill with fake fear, her hands flailing for effect. I stood frozen in the doorway, stunned that she was spinning this fantasy right in front of law enforcement. The officer raised a hand, signaling for calm, but before I could defend myself, Karen's tone grew even more commanding. "Arrest him now," she demanded, jabbing her finger toward me. "People like him can't just ignore the rules. Do your job." For a moment, it felt like I was trapped in some bizarre theater where truth had no weight, where loudness and entitlement held more sway than facts. My pulse raced, my chest tight, but then, just as the officer turned toward me, something shifted behind him. I saw a familiar figure walking up the driveway, calm and composed, her presence immediately commanding respect. It was my wife, fresh off her shift, still in her police uniform, badge gleaming, radio clipped neatly to her shoulder. She stopped just behind the officer, folding her arms as her eyes locked on Karen. The transformation on Karen's face was priceless. 1 second, fiery confidence, the next, pale shock as the realization hit her like a tidal wave. My wife's voice was steady, cold steel wrapped in calm authority. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her tone cutting through the chaos like a blade. The officer blinked, his eyes flicking between the two women, suddenly recognizing my wife's uniform. Karen stuttered, her mouth opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. Shish, she's a cop. She finally squeaked, her bravado evaporating in an instant. My wife raised one eyebrow, not breaking eye contact. Yes, and you just broke into my home. Silence hung heavy in the air. The officer's face hardened as he turned toward Karen, his hand slowly lowering from his holster. The woman who had strutted into our lives with keys and threats just moments ago now looked small, cornered, her power crumbling before our eyes. And in that silence, I realized this was only the beginning of a reckoning Karen had never imagined she would face.